What is up, kings and queens? How y'all doing out there? Hopefully well. My name is Sinclair Walker. I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. That's a mouthful, so if I mention it again, I will just say I am an FDNP. But long story short, I am a holistic health coach who helps women lose weight, feel so good that they're going to go into the back of their closet and pull out that freakum dress and not just put it on, but wear it with confidence. All right. So thank you for joining me for another masterclass in the 90-day weight loss formula program. Today's going to be a very important one. It's a really important one. And we're going to continue the conversation about nutrition. So in the last class, we talked a little bit about inflammatory foods, common inflammatory foods, food journaling, and how important food journaling is. We talked about how important food journaling is. We talked about the common inflammatory foods. So that was dairy, that was gluten, that was sugar and alcohol. So those are the four ones that we talked about in the last session. And hello, Pri, how are you doing? Very happy you are able to make it. I think it's Saturday evening where you are. So happy that you were able to make it today. But yeah, last time we talked about inflammatory foods and food journaling. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition as a whole. And I'm really going to try to simplify it as much as possible because I know that there's a lot of information out there about what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. And so I'm going to try my best just to simplify it as much as possible here today with you, and hopefully in under 45 minutes. That is my goal. But we're going to talk about what you should be eating. And let me take a step back because it's really not what you should be eating, because whoever's watching this, one of the main things that I, preach in this program is that there is no one size fits all approach to health or to diet or to nutrition or to anything. So really what I'm going to do, and we'll talk about it on the next slide, is to teach you how to create your own meal plan. And obviously I'm here to guide you in that process as well. But and we're gonna go through some things on what is nutrition, what do we really need to know about nutrition. Let's just get down to what's important for us to know about the foods we're eating. How do we choose the good quality foods that are actually going to help us nourish our bodies, but also lose weight? That's why you're here, right? Is you want to lose weight. So that's going to be a big focus of today. So, like I said, we're going to talk about what to eat, but we're also going to talk about how to eat to lose weight. Because what you eat is only part of the picture. There's actually a way to go about eating, especially when you have the goal, a weight loss goal. How you eat your foods can very much determine how your body reacts to those foods, how many calories are absorbed, how the nutrients are absorbed in your body. All of those things can be can change with the order that you eat your foods, with the time that you eat your foods. Those are some things that we're going to talk about today. So I said I'm going to try to make it in under 45 minutes. Let's get started. So I mentioned briefly already, but the objective of this class is not to tell you exactly what you need to eat, right? We'll talk more about that in our one-on-one sessions when we can go over like your food sensitivities and things like that. But this is to show you how to build your own nutrition plan to foster weight loss and vitality. I mentioned already, there is no one size fits all diet. And so we have to figure out what's going to work for you. And again, I'm here to guide you along through that process. But today we're going to talk about, I mentioned whole foods before, like most of your diet should be whole foods. There could be a question on what the heck is a whole food? If it's going in my mouth, it should be whole, right? But there is actually a classification of foods, and we'll talk about what that means to eat whole foods, what is considered a whole food and what isn't. So briefly, let's go over what this class will talk about. Like I mentioned, we'll talk about whole foods focus. We're going to go over the macronutrients. We're going to go over kind of what foods fall into each category and how much of each one you should be consuming. We're going to talk about the order of grabation. I'm going to trademark that. If it's not already, I didn't even check. But if you heard of, like in math class, the order of operations, PEMDAS, right? You do your parentheses and then your exponents and then addition and multiplication, whatever it is, right? Your order of operations. And we're going to actually talk about the order of grabation. how you should actually be eating. Let's say you have a plate of food on your, in front of you, how you should actually, what you should eat first, what you should eat last, that is actually going to help you lose weight. There is a method to the madness. And then lastly, we're going to talk about meal timing. So what you eat is part of it, but also when you eat that throughout the day is also going to determine what your body does with that energy. Does it convert to fat? Does it get used for energy? Does it get stored in the muscles? All of these things are determined by a lot of factors, but one of them being when you eat. So let's jump into whole foods. So when I say that we should have a whole foods focus, what I mean by that is that, try to follow the 80-20 rule, which is that 80% of the foods that you eat, most of your diet, should be comprised of whole unprocessed foods. So what I mean by whole foods is it should really be as close to its natural state, to how it came from in nature as possible, because our genes, our genetics, our everything about our bodies are going to it's going to be more recognizable in its whole food form. Okay, our bodies we were meant to consume fruits and vegetables. We have been for centuries, for thousands of years, right? But Pop-Tarts are a new invention. Our body doesn't always know what to do with a Pop-Tart, because is it fruit? Is it grains? It's a little bit of both, but it's so far removed from its original state that our body doesn't really know what to do with it. So typically those things, they just get stored as fat. So yes, whole foods is, like a whole, if you think like a whole apple, right? A whole apple is going to, affect the body very differently than apple juice or applesauce. All of those things, apple concentrate, which is used as a sweetener in some like smoothies and things like that. All of those things are actually going to have a lot different effects on the body. So what I mean by whole foods, let's go down the list so I can actually talk about each one individually. So fruits, veggies, quality meat, nuts and seeds, legumes, and whole grains. That's kind of the exhaustive list of whole foods. So if we're going to dive into each one a little bit, I'm not going to like exhaust each one, crazy. But the first one is fruits. Fruits, sometimes they can get a bad rep. I've even personally, been on social media and telling people, seeing people say that you should not be eating fruit. I'm not one of those people personally. I think that it was on this planet for a reason. It's sweet. It is an enjoyable experience for us to eat fruit. And I think that is by design. I am reading a book that I definitely recommend if you like to read about health and you want to know where I get a lot of my information from. I'm reading a book called Glucose Revolution. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but this is actually a great book that talks about blood sugar and how different hacks that you can use to balance your blood sugar. And one of the things she talks about is kind of the history of humankind discovering fruits, and the fact that they are sweet because we are meant to consume them. Sweetness in the kind of the history of food, sweetness is nature's sign that this is safe to eat. So I do believe that we should be eating fruits. However, they should not be the main star of the show. Okay, so I do think that fruits are good to be consumed in moderation. Berries are probably, if you had to put a hierarchy of fruits, berries arguably are at the top. And that's pretty much all berries. And that is because they are so nutrient dense. They have so many vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. That is one of the main kind of selling points of berries, is they are very antioxidant rich. And how you know that is by their pigment, their color. So, I've heard the phrase like the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. There's a similar phrase, which is in nutrition, the darker the berry, like the higher the antioxidant concentration. So like blueberries, things like acai, which you typically find in like a concentrated version, are very, very high in antioxidants. And antioxidants are great for preventing, advanced aging, for fighting cancerous cells in the body. So antioxidants is definitely something that you want to be consuming on a regular basis. So whether that's a whole, a handful of blueberries, whether that's putting some frozen blueberries in a smoothie, maybe putting some berries, some strawberries. I love strawberries. Putting some in a bowl of oatmeal or, a parfait or something like that. However you choose to consume, berries are great. What I will say about fruits is just to make sure that a lot of the typical fruits they can really spike the blood sugar. So although fruit in general, is a good thing for us to be consuming, you want to just be careful that you are not over consuming the sugar, the fruit that is going to spike your blood sugar, because when that happens, you are more likely to store food as fat. So things like bananas and apples, mangoes, just be mindful. And you can actually look up the glycemic index is what it's called. And that's basically carbohydrates, foods, things like fruits and vegetables ranked on how much they spike your blood sugar. I will say there's a little bit of individuality there, but that's something good for you to keep in mind. But berries, if you take nothing away from the fruit section, berries are amazing. Make sure that you are incorporating some berries into your diet. The next one is vegetables, veggies. I think we all know that veggies are important. I think we've been kind of told since, from childhood that you got to finish your vegetables on your plate. There is a reason why that is, and that's because a lot of micronutrients, a lot of our vitamins and minerals are hidden in these vegetables. And so vegetables are a vital part of any diet. So you got to make sure that you are getting a good amount of vegetables. What portion of vegetables should be on your plate? That is, you're going to have to do a little bit of experimentation on your individual body, because I can tell you, make half of your plate vegetables. But if you do that and you're still hungry afterwards, then maybe that's not the case. Maybe you need more protein on your plate than vegetables. And so, yeah, that's going to vary a little bit person to person, but definitely want to make sure that at least a quarter of your plate, I would say, should be some form of vegetable. And I will talk about like starchy versus non-starchy vegetables later on, so I won't go there yet. But vegetables, you got to have them. And again, you want them as much as possible in their whole form. So eating whole vegetables, whether that's some grilled vegetables, on the side of your plate, or a salad, or something of the sort, a bowl with those vegetables. That's the best way to consume it. However, I would say the next best would be like frozen vegetables. When you freeze something, for the most part, they will hold their nutritional value for the most part. So if fresh vegetables is not an option, then frozen vegetables is another alternative that can work. At the bottom of the list, personally, is where I would put canned vegetables. And that is just because they usually will have added preservatives or salt or things like that to actually make it preserve and last for months on your shelf. So if it's the only option, go for it. It's better than not having, vegetables at all. But on the hierarchy of fresh to frozen to canned, I would put canned at the bottom of the list. Okay. Next is quality meat. And I did emphasize quality. And that's because their meat comes in all different shapes, sizes, and quality, measures. So you want to make sure that you're getting meat from a good source and that it's actually nutrient dense meat. The phrase, you are what you eat. There's an additional phrase, you are what you eat. You are what you ate. That's the phrase. But basically, right, if you're sitting down to eat a piece of chicken, whatever the chicken consumed is also, it's actually built into the fibers of that chicken meat. So getting chicken from a source that is feeding chickens what chickens actually should be eating, and allowing the chickens to go run and exercise and get healthy muscles and body parts made, that's going to be the best source of chicken. So if you go to the store and you see things like pasture raised, it may cost a few dollars more, but it is an investment, as I say, an investment in your health, because that chicken is going to have more nutrients, but also less hormones, less antibiotics and pesticides than some of the conventional chicken that you can find in the grocery store. So that goes for pretty much all poultry. You want to find pasture raised, which basically just means that those chickens, they lived a happy life before they came to their demise. And so the same thing with, beef, pork, anything like that, lamb, grass-fed is what you want to go for there, because that is what they're meant to in nature, right? In their natural state, they eat grass. So that is what they're meant to eat. They're not eating random slop that's given to them. They're eating grass because that's what provides healthy, lean cows and lambs or whatever, that provide, again, nutrient dense meat for us to then consume. So again, it may be in the section that costs a couple extra dollars more, but it's an investment in your health. Okay, so that is my personal, oh, and then the last thing, fish. Wild caught. Wild caught is the best type of fish, because again, it's in its natural state. They're going to be eating the diet that a salmon or a mackerel is meant to eat in its natural state. So that's going to have some benefits with the nutrient profile that is present in that piece of fish. And then eggs, again, same as like the chickens, pasture raised is best. Okay, next, nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are great sources of fat and protein, and they're very easy things to incorporate as like a snack or like a drizzle or a sprinkle on a salad or just to top any meal. Those are, nuts and seeds are great additions to really any diet. So definitely play around with, and there's so many different kinds, right? It doesn't have to be like peanuts and pumpkin seeds or, sunflower seeds. I feel like those are common ones we know, but there are pistachios and walnuts and almonds and hemp seeds and flax seeds. Like there are so many different types of nuts and seeds, and it's fun to experiment. I actually really like hemp seeds. They taste nutty and delicious. Okay, legumes. So those are your beans, any type of beans, any type of lentils. These are good. They are high in protein, they're high in fiber. This is really what's going to help provide some bulk to your digestion, if you will. So not all legumes are able to be digested. So that may sound like a bad thing, but it actually helps feed the bacteria in your gut, which has a lot of benefits, right? So they may not be for everybody. For a lot of folks, it may cause some gas or bloating. So experiment with yourself, see how you do on with eating legumes. But it is a primary part of a lot of cultures. So it's something to definitely experiment with to see if it makes you feel good. But listen to your body, of course. And then lastly, whole grains. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but whole grains, you've got your rice, you've got amaranth. I think I have a list later on, but these are good to incorporate in your diet. I will say that if weight loss is your goal, just be mindful of how many whole grains you're incorporating, only because it is a carbohydrate that will spike the blood sugar. And, if not consuming the right one, or if you're consuming it by itself, especially, is where it's dangerous. It can lead to excess fat storage. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. So this is a list of, kind of the high level view of what I say Whole Foods, or when you even like Whole Foods Market, right? When they say something like that, kind of what they mean is that we focus on the unprocessed natural forms of these things as much as possible. If 80% of your diet is made up of these things, then you're going to be good to go. Your body's going to see a lot of improvements with, again, your digestion. It's going to be more bioavailable, which means if you're consuming vitamin C from spinach, your body's actually going to be able to extract that vitamin C and use it to strengthen your immune system, versus like a vitamin C supplement or something like that was made in a lab. Your body may not even recognize that when you eat it. So definitely want to make sure you're consuming these bioavailable forms of food. Okay, enough about whole foods. Let's move on to the next topic, which is macronutrients. So I think most folks know at least one, can name at least one macronutrient. Let me know in the chat, what is your idea of a macronutrient? Or when I say macronutrient, what comes to your mind? In the chat, let me know. Or off mute, you can come off mute as well.
Proteins, fats, and what's the other, carbs.
Oh yeah, you got it. You got it. So that's exactly what it is. Those are the three I'm going to go over. Proteins, fats, and carbohydrates in that order. It's like it was fate. So let's start with proteins. So protein, I'm going to go out on a whim here and say that it is the most essential macronutrient. The reason why I say that is because our bodies, our muscle tissues, our immune system, our cells, everything is made up of, it needs protein and is made up of proteins. So if we are not providing our body with adequate protein, our bodies are not, our bodies are not going to be able to build the proper muscle, to restore our immune system, to, our cells are always regenerating, right? Restoring, they die and then they rebirth. So that's a process. Everything needs protein. Okay. It is absolutely vital for our well-being. And it's just, when you think about lean muscle, or muscle that we need to survive, to just be able to do our daily things, right? To sit on the couch, to get up, to grab something off the shelf, we need muscles. Our muscles would start to just deteriorate if we did not get enough protein. So protein is absolutely critical. And it's a key macronutrient, again, if you're trying to lose weight, because you want to, unless you also are trying to get rid of your muscle, which I think most people are not, because again, you need the muscle just to be able to move around for mobility reasons. But if you want to maintain the muscle that you do have while losing the excess fat on your body, having adequate protein is absolutely vital. So I'll talk about some different forms of protein. Quality meats is, one, if you are a meat eater, quality meats is going to be probably your main source of most of your protein. So that's things like chicken, turkey, beef, lamb, fish, pork, and eggs. I threw eggs in there as well. These are all good sources of protein. Now, again, when I say good sources, that is a relative term. You have to determine for you what is going to be the best source, what makes you feel the best. So I know, like, for myself, pork doesn't always make me feel that great. Sometimes it can cause a lot of gas and bloating. So I try not to eat it on a regular basis. That's something that is really mostly a treat when we go and travel. And, if there's like a traditional dish that's pork, I'm going to try it, because where else do you do things like that? But I know for me, it's not something that I incorporate on my daily basis because my body does not react well to it. But fish, my body loves fish. So I eat a lot of fish. It makes me feel like afterwards I feel light. I feel like I don't feel that heavy, like itis, right? When you go and you want to go to sleep afterwards, I don't really feel that after I eat things like fish. And even like the lighter meats like chicken and turkey and things like that. I feel pretty good after. So those are a part of my diet. They haven't always been. I had times when I was not eating chicken, turkey, beef, lamb, pork, none of that, right? But there was a season for that. But at this point in my life, all of those things, they make me feel pretty good after I eat them. So they're a part of my diet. So definitely, experiment a little bit with that. If there's something, I know, Julie, it does not vibe with seafood. So that's fine. Fish does not need to be a part of your diet. But if you really like turkey and you really like chicken, then go for it. Make that, a good protein source for you. Legumes are another one. So if you do follow a plant-based diet, legumes are a great protein source. And just if you want to do a meatless Monday, or, sometimes we do have like plant-based meals that don't have any animal protein in it. These are a great way to still make sure that you are not only feeling full. Beans are also great for you to feel satiated and feel full afterwards. But they do have a high amount of protein in them. So these are any type of beans, your black beans, your kidney beans, your pinto beans, lentils. I love lentils, especially Ethiopian food. Oh, so good. chickpeas. These are all legumes that are going to have a good amount of protein. And then seeds. Seeds are, I think, an underrated source of protein. In like, I used to have some hemp seeds in here, just snack on them. But you know, in a couple tablespoons of hemp seeds or flax seeds, you can get like 5 to 10 grams of protein, which may not seem like a lot if you're trying to get 150 grams in a day. But again, think about the fact that I said that's just in like a couple tablespoons of seeds. If you already have a nice meal and you're trying to just up the protein, that's a great way to just sprinkle some on top and you barely even notice that it's there and you're getting that extra protein. And yeah, sometimes truthfully, I just like to snack on some hemp seeds because they're good. They taste nutty. But it's a great, they're very versatile in terms of what you can put them in, what you can sprinkle them on. Chia seeds, I love to make chia pudding, which is so basically as soon as the chia seeds get put in any sort of liquid, they kind of form almost like a pudding-like texture. And if you do that with like a coconut milk and maybe a couple drops of stevia to get it sweet, some vanilla, it's like almost like a parfait, and you can put berries and things on it. And that is a very balanced, a very balanced, high protein, high fat meal. So a little tip for you. And then protein powders. So if we're looking in the realm of protein powder should not be your main source of protein. Now, it is a great way to get some protein in quickly. Like it's a great post-workout, post-workout quick way to get some protein in between meals. But I'm personally not like eating a protein shake can be a meal. I'm not against that. I will do that sometimes for breakfast. But just make sure that you are having, again, the whole form of protein should make up most of your intake. So whether that's in legumes or meats or seeds, you want it to be in its whole form most of the time. But again, protein powders, I do drink protein shakes, sometimes as a part of breakfast. But I just be cognizant that what I don't want is for anybody to go extreme and like, okay, I'm going to go crazy with protein and drink 4 protein shakes a day and, not actually eat anything. We don't want to do that because we want to have protein, again, in its whole form as much as possible. So protein powders are great. I'm not knocking them. And they can be a part of a great balanced diet. Just make sure you're not overdoing it. But there are different types of protein sources. You can get it from like whey protein or pea protein, brown rice protein. So depending on whether you want to go animal or plant-based, that's kind of your first decision. And then after that, play around with different ones. I do like Sun Warrior. That's a brand that I use personally for my protein. They have a really good plant-based, gluten-free, all of the things, dairy-free, soy-free, sugar-free, all that fun stuff. But also a really great taste, which is important. So protein, absolutely essential. Something to play around with is how much protein you actually should have on your plate. I would say at minimum, you want to have like 1/4 of your plate. And when I talk about, I'm not an advocate for like weighing foods or anything like that. I think that can get a little bit obsessive for me personally. If that's your thing, go for it. But when I think about foods and how much I should be consuming, I try to do it in like, if you were to look at your plate and divide it into fourths, how much of each macronutrient should be comprised in each on the plate. So I would say at minimum, you want to have at least 1/4 of your plate be protein. And what I would play around with is how you feel after eating a meal where maybe only 1/4 of your plate is protein, and then up it and, maybe go to half of your plate being protein and see how you feel. Do you feel more energized? Do you feel sluggish? Do you feel tired? Right? Those are things to play around with so that you can kind of see for your body how much protein is ideal for you. So for example, for me, when I first started out, I was going a little bit lighter on the protein. So I would do about 25% of my plate being protein. And that was fine for me. I wasn't doing like weightlifting. I wasn't doing a whole lot of strength training at that time. I was doing a lot of walking. I didn't need, excessive amount of protein. So that worked for me at that time. Right now, though, I'm trying to get back into, doing a little bit of weightlifting, incorporating some strength training and building muscle while I'm also, getting rid of the excess fat. So I have upped my protein intake. So now at this point, I try to get about 50% of my plate being protein sources. So that's going to be a little bit of, it's going to take a little bit of playing around with it. And we'll talk about that in our one-on-one sessions, but definitely something to think about. But you need to have protein in every single meal. That is something that I will say. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, I would even incorporate it in your snacks. Make sure that you're having a good quality protein in every single meal. So if you're looking at breakfast and you're like, I don't have any of these things in my breakfast, you need to go ahead and add it in. Okay. Especially if weight loss is your goal. All right. The next one is fat. So fat is vital for health and it's not the bad guy. And the reason why I put that is because sometimes I think in the nutrition world, and even just the world in general, fat can kind of have a bad rep to it. I think that came a lot with like the no fat or the low fat diet that was really popular in like the 90s and early 2000s. But there's a lot of research that has gone, into that and the effects of that low fat era, that low fat diet. And it's basically a lot of the research is confirming that fat is a vital part of our diet and of our health. We cannot cut out fat. Our body needs fat. Our brain needs fat to survive. So it is vital for health. It's not the bad guy. Don't be afraid of fat. Fat that you consume does not directly lead to fat on your body. It doesn't necessarily work like that. So don't be afraid of fat. And fat can actually, if you are familiar with a keto diet, what makes the keto diet successful for a lot of people is it's high fat, high protein, and consuming high fat, high protein, low carbohydrate can actually start to train your body to use fat as its main source of fuel. And that can be helpful, especially for weight loss, because your body can utilize the excess fat on your body for fuel rather than having to wait for another rush of carbohydrates coming in. Okay. So that's a whole nother masterclass. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but to kind of simplify fats, there's a lot of different categories of unsaturated versus saturated versus monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. We could be here for hours. I just want to simplify it again. This is Nutrition Simplified. So we're going to simplify it into animal fat and plant fat. I think it's if you are an animal eater, that sounds bad. But if you do not follow a vegan diet, then I think it's important to get both sources of animal and protein fat. So some really good sources of animal fat are any type of meat fat. So if you're eating chicken, if you're eating beef, it's going to have the fat from the animal is going to be built into the fat, into the meat, and that can be good. You don't want excessive fat, right? But some fat, the natural fat that is, and the oils and the grease that is built into the meat can serve as dietary fat, absolutely. So keep that in mind, that if you already have meat incorporated, you may not need to add excessive extra fat on top of that. So meat fat, butter is a great source of fat, and ghee is a great source of fat as well. Now I will say, notice I did not put any other sources of dairy products on here, only because I don't want to contradict myself. In the last masterclass, we talked about dairy products being inflammatory. So the reason why I put butter and ghee on here is that both in butter and ghee, there is minimal lactose, and lactose is typically the culprit that is causing the inflammation. So again, this is something for you to kind of experiment with yourself, see how you feel with butter. But ghee is basically clarified butter, so it's got almost all of the lactose taken out of it. So basically what you've got left is almost like a melted butter type of situation, and it's good to cook with, especially for like high heats and things like that. So that's animal fat. And then your plant fats. So things that are great sources of plant fat, it's all fat. Plant sources of fat is nuts, seeds. So we've already talked about like walnuts are amazing sources of omega-3 fatty acids. You got your seeds, your hemp seeds, your flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, and any seed is going to be a good source of fat. Seed oils, and I'm not going to say all seed oils are good, because that is not the case. There's a lot of oils that I would recommend that you stay away from, and not just for weight loss, just for health, because they really don't do the body that much justice. So things like canola oil, peanut oil, those types of things I would stay away from as much as possible. The seed oils that are going to be good for you and have a lot of health benefits, especially with dietary fat, are olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil. Those are great plant sources of fat that you can cook with, in replace of the other sources that I mentioned, the canola oils and things like that. So avocado oils are great for high heat. So if you want to like pan fry something, avocado oil is a good option. Olive oil is great for like sauteing or even just drizzling on a salad for dressings, or, it's great has a lot of benefits just eaten by itself, raw, whatever you want to call it. Avocado, the actual fruit, I think technically it's a fruit. Avocado is a great source of fat, and I know it's being popularized right now. Avocado toast, and there's avocado pudding, and I love avocado, so I could be here all day. But avocado is a great source of fat that you definitely, if you like it, should incorporate. And then olives, right? Olive oil is a great source of fat because it comes from olives. Olives are a great source of whole food plant sources of fat that have a lot of there's different types of olives that have a nice nutrient profile, that are not only going to provide you a good source of fat, but it's going to provide you with linoleic acids and all of those fun things that could help you lose weight. Okay, so this is fat. Let me know if you have any questions about fat, but we're going to move on to the last one, which is proteins. I'm sorry, which is carbohydrates. And I did not change my picture here, but that's okay because olives are still technically carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are important. They are important. I will never say that they're not important, but they are not the main star of the show. And the reason why I say that is because in the standard American diet, sometimes they can be made the main star of the show. And in certain dishes, they are the main portion, which is fine in moderation, right? I'm not saying you can never have pasta, but make sure that you have some veggies and some protein mixed in with your pasta. But some great sources that I recommend, I'm going to go over sources that I really recommend of carbohydrates. First and foremost are going to be your non-starchy vegetables. I put non-vegetables. Non-starchy vegetables is what that should say. And so Brussels sprouts, broccoli, dark leafy greens. I wish I could highlight dark leafy greens. Definitely make sure you're getting some spinach, some kale, some Swiss chard, some dark leaf lettuce, whatever it is. Dark leafy greens are a must. Asparagus, cauliflower, mushrooms, onions, peppers, zucchini, turnips. This is not every single non-starchy vegetable, but this is a great list to start from, right? If you're not sure where to start, these non-starchy vegetables, you really don't need to worry about consuming too much of, because they're just great nutrient-dense vegetables. They're typically low in calorie, which really should not be a concern, but in case it is, I thought I'd mention it. But these are vegetables that don't spike the blood sugar very high, so that's good. The starchy vegetables, the reason why they are still vegetables, still can be part of a healthy diet, but they're just a step below the non-starchy vegetables, is because they can still spike the blood sugar. So eating things like potatoes, if you eat a potato versus eating a piece of broccoli, you're going to have a higher spike in your blood sugar, which means you're going to have more glucose entering your bloodstream. If it's not used, can get stored to fat. That is why keeping your blood sugar relatively stable throughout the day is so important. I'll probably do a whole masterclass on that itself, but starchy vegetables can still be a part of your diet. Definitely not saying that you cannot, should not consume them, but just prioritize the non-starchy vegetables over the starchy ones. So starchy vegetables are things like yams, potatoes, corn, beans, peas, and parsnips, right? So if you think about the texture of all of those foods versus the texture of, mushrooms or the texture of peppers, I feel like you can almost feel the difference in your mouth of the starchiness, right? And that's the attribute of the vegetables that can spike the blood sugar. And then lastly, whole grains. So that can be your wild or brown rice. I love wild rice. I actually typically will get a blend of brown and wild rice. But those are great whole foods based forms of rice. You got amaranth, you've got quinoa, you've got barley, you've got oatmeal, you've got millet. So there are a lot of different forms of carbohydrates outside of, notice I didn't put things like we really want to stay away from, especially while you're trying to lose weight, as much as possible, right? It's not as much as possible, I will say. The white bread, the white pastas, white rice even, although there is some nuance there on what's better for digestion. So I'll leave that up to your individuality. But I would say, yeah, in general, anything that has a whole grain version of it, you want to stay away from the white version of it, or just the plain processed version of it, because that is typically made with like an all-purpose flour, with wheat flour, that is going to spike the blood sugar instantly as soon as you consume it. And again, that is something we want to avoid because that can lead to more fat storage. So these forms of whole grains have a slow burn. So rather than you eat it and your blood sugar goes way up and then it crashes later, these forms of whole grains are going to have a little bit of a slow burn throughout the day. So your body's using it throughout the day and you never have like a sugar rush and then a crash afterwards. If you ever experienced that, think about what you ate. This is where the food journal comes in handy. Think about what you ate and think about whatever carbohydrate sources you were eating. And that could be the source of your that crash that you feel later on. So carbohydrates, I would say your non-starchy vegetables, eat as much of those as possible. I wouldn't even worry about limiting that. But your starchy vegetables and whole grains, I would say, a fourth of your plate maybe is a great place to start. If you, there may be even times when you skip out on the whole grains and things like that altogether. That's also an option. I'm not saying that you have to do that to lose weight, but that's, there are times where I will go low carb, if you will, and, maybe replace like rice with cauliflower rice, or, have a bed of lettuce instead of rice, or pasta or something like that. There's zucchini noodles instead of your pasta noodles, things like that, that can actually replace any type of grain with a non-starchy vegetable. But this is kind of the hierarchy here of, carbohydrates and how you can incorporate them, what types of things you can incorporate in your diet. Okay. So let me know if there's any questions on the macronutrients, but I would say, some place to start with each of these macronutrients. And this is where the experimentation, I think, gets a little fun. But, start with like your protein and see, make it a fourth of your plate and see how you do there. And then go to 50% of your plate and see how you do, and just kind of tailor it after that. And for the rest of the plate, play around with, okay, maybe I put a couple slices of avocado, that's a fourth of my plate. And then, some spinach, and then you get your dark leafy green with some chicken breast, and you've covered all of your macronutrients, right? You've got your protein from the chicken breast, you got your dark leafy greens for your carbohydrates, and then you've got a couple slices of avocado for some fat. Very simple, very, if simplicity is your thing, that can be a great quick lunch or quick dinner that can hit all of the macronutrients and, in a relatively quick meal. So the key takeaway from the macronutrient is that just try to make sure that you are incorporating at least proteins and fats in every meal. Carbohydrates, one of the cool things and what makes carbohydrates not actually essential is that our body can produce carbohydrates. Our body can produce glucose, which is what carbohydrates get broken down to. So even if you're not eating carbohydrates, your body is going to produce what it needs for energy. So if you had to start off with trying to figure out how much macronutrients you should be eating, I would prioritize starting with protein and then move on to fat and save carbohydrates for last. And again, just experiment with how much of your meal comprised of each of those macronutrients, how you feel afterwards, and have that kind of guide your own your own meal plan. Okay, so we're going to finish up here. I just have, I think, 2 more slides after this. Really quickly, we're going to talk about the order of grubation, which I talked about, kind of like the order of operations. We're going to talk about the order that your food should be eaten, because the order that your food hits the digestive tract matters a lot. Okay, so the order of grubation. Let's say you've got your plate in front of you. You want to eat your veggies first. And I emphasize non-starchy veggies because you want to eat the food that's going to provide energy, but not the blood sugar spike is what you want to eat first. Okay, and so that's why veggies coming first is a great thing to incorporate. So an easy way to do this is to start with a little dinner salad, or start with a side salad before your main meal. The important part here is that you're eating it first before anything else, right? So if they put bread down on the table, don't touch it. I'm not saying you can eat it, but I would not touch it until you've had your salad first. It doesn't have to be an elaborate salad. I've started incorporating this, and truthfully, sometimes what I'll just do is throw some spring mix in a bowl with a little bit of my favorite balsamic vinegar, or even just some olive oil with like some lemon or something like that, and call it a day. But starting with a salad or just veggies. If you're not big on salad, then you can just, if you have veggies on your plate, so the example I mentioned earlier of your chicken, your avocado, and your spinach, if you eat the spinach first, you're going to see some improvements with how you digest your food and the blood sugar spike that comes afterwards. Okay, so this is going to be more important when you're eating carbohydrates. So if you have a meal that doesn't have any type of starchy vegetable, like a potato or a yam, or what's another starchy vegetable that I mentioned? For the sake of time, all the starchy vegetables I mentioned before, or some rice or pasta or things like that. If you have a carbohydrate, that's where you want to incorporate this. If your meal doesn't have any type of those carbohydrates, then this is not as important. Okay, but if you are going to have bread, pasta, potatoes, anything like that is going to lead to some sort of blood sugar spike because of just the nature of the food, it is best to eat your non-starchy vegetables first. So again, that can be, we'll go back to the list of non-starchy vegetables. I passed it. Here we go. So, oh my goodness. The non-starchy vegetables are, you can have pre your dinner meal, right? You can have some Brussels sprouts, some broccoli, some dark leafy greens, some asparagus, some cauliflower, mushrooms, onions, peppers, zucchinis, turnips. These are all good to have as the first thing that you eat in your meal. Okay. And so what this is going to do, if you think about, and this is something from Glucose Revolution. So again, this is a great book to read. If you think about your digestive system as a sink, even though everything is going into the same place, there is piping, right? Your intestines is kind of like a piping, and whether your vegetables hit first or your potatoes hit first is going to actually determine how your body digests it. So if you think about, if it's been a couple hours since you've eaten, whatever you eat first is going to have the biggest effect on your blood sugar. So if you go for the bread first, if you go for the potatoes first, if you go for the French fries first, if that's the first thing you eat in a couple of hours, you're going to see a huge blood sugar spike. And that's not good because, again, if we're not actively going to be using that energy, walking after a meal is a great way to use that energy. If you're not going to be actively using that energy, that extra blood sugar that's going to be floating around in your blood can get stored as fat. So we want to keep that blood sugar nice and leveled as much as possible. And one of the hacks to do that is to start with your veggies. After your veggies, you want to eat your proteins and fats next. Whether you're eating proteins versus fats, that doesn't matter as much. The important part here is eating veggies first, and the next part, which is eating your carbs last. So again, if you're at a restaurant and they have bread, I'm not saying don't eat the bread, but save it for the end of the meal because it's going to have less of a blood sugar spike eaten at the end of the meal versus the beginning of the meal. Okay. And this is scientifically proven. So save the bread, the potatoes, or the pasta for the last part of your meal. After you've eaten your veggies, after you've eaten your proteins and fats. And the reason why, I've mentioned this a few times, but you'll see a lower blood sugar spike, which means lower glucose in your blood that's waiting to get stored as fat, and a lower likelihood, again, of food being stored as fat. Okay, so a very small hack you can do just by changing the order of the food. You can have the same plate of food, but by eating it one way versus another can drastically change how your body takes the energy and either uses it or stores it as fat. Okay. Okay, the very last thing I want to talk about here is meal timing. So one of the reason why I want to talk about meal timing is because eating throughout the day increases the likelihood of fat storage. So basically similar to what I just said a second ago about the blood sugar spike, if we're constantly eating throughout the day, our body is constantly having to digest the food and find somewhere for all of this energy to go, rather than kind of giving yourself a break, giving insulin, which is the hormone that's really responsible for taking this energy and doing something with it. Giving insulin a break you can see a lot of benefits from that. So this is where things like intermittent fasting come into play. And it's not right for everybody. I'm not going to say that everybody should do that, but we're going to talk about an easy way to adopt a mild form of intermittent fasting, which can be very effective for weight loss. Okay, so hopefully I haven't lost you just by using the F word. Okay, so even if intermittent fasting is not going to be something that's right for you, it was not right for me when I first started out in my weight loss journey because my hormones were all out of whack. So this is why we run the stress and hormone panel. So this will be something that we talk about, whether this is something we incorporate with you to determine on your hormone levels. But if you have healthy hormone levels, this can be a great weight loss tactic. And it just changes when you eat. It doesn't change what you eat. Right? But this doesn't mean you eat whatever you want. This incorporates everything else we've talked about in terms of eating whole foods, right? Eating them in the right order. If you also practice intermittent fasting, you're going to see these results even just multiplied. Okay. But even if intermittent fasting is not right for you, I would say your eating window should not exceed 12 hours. And what I mean by that is if you typically eat your breakfast at 9 a.m., perfectly fine, but you should be done eating by eating and drinking, consuming anything with any sort of calories or substance by 9 p.m., right? So 12 hours after your first meal. And it would be the same thing, right? If you eat your first meal at 7 a.m., you should probably be done eating by 7 p.m. And the reason why you want to do this is, again, just to give your body a couple of hours where it is a couple more hours out of the day where it is not having to fully digest food. The digestive process is a very taxing process. And you really want to allow your body to, when you have these periods of time when there's not actively food available for energy, that's what allows your body to actually go into your fat stores and eat at some of that excess fat for energy. And that's what we want, right? That's what leads to fat loss. So again, even if intermittent fasting is not going to be something you implement, I personally recommend, just as a good rule of thumb, and for just longevity, is your eating window should not be more than 12 hours. So even if you're not going to incorporate that, try to just keep your eating window to 12 hours. Now, if your hormone levels are good and you are willing to just change your eating schedule slightly to see some maximum benefits, then slowly decreasing your eating window by either pushing breakfast back or eating dinner earlier can have great benefit. And again, the reason why you want to do this is because you're giving yourself some time to still be moving around. You're still living life, right? But because you don't actively have something in your stomach, some glucose, some nutrients to use for fuel, your body's like, well, hey, we still need to pump our blood. We still need to breathe. We still need to do all these things. We need energy. Where are we going to get it from? Oh, we have all this excess stored fat. This is what it's here for. It's so that we can use it when there's no food present. But if we never put our bodies in the situation where there's no food present, it's never going to have the opportunity to actually eat at that excess fat. Okay. So that is what this intermittent fasting is all about. And that's the benefit here. So by slowly decreasing your eating window. So right now, I mentioned, even if you're not doing intermittent fasting, or IF, as I'll say from now on, 12 hours can be a good standard eating window. But if you're going to start it, maybe you move it to 10. So, right, maybe you do a 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And it, whether you want to do a late breakfast or an early dinner is completely determinant on you and your lifestyle. I know for me, it's much easier to not eat breakfast because I typically have some sort of active morning. So making a breakfast isn't part of my morning routine, and I'm fine with that. So for me, pushing back breakfast to like around noon or even 1 o'clock is easier than eating dinner earlier. But for some folks, like, if you really like breakfast, you really want to be able to eat, soon after you wake up, that's fine. You can just eat dinner earlier. So maybe your last meal is at 5 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. So you would just have a couple more hours in the day right before bed, when your body is able to, again, digest the food and have a couple of hours where it's operating without having a food source available. I would, however, recommend that you do not lower your eating window for any less than 8 hours, at least not for a long period of time. And this is just because intermittent fasting can be a great tool, but it can also be overdone. I am a victim of overdoing it. And that's actually part of what put my hormones out of whack. Okay. So just make sure that, I would say going from anywhere from a 12-hour to an 8-hour eating window can be really effective at helping you burn some of that stored fat on your body. And I think another key here that's going to help this have lasting results and not lead to a burnout like it did with me is give yourself 1 to 2 days a week where you're not worried about the eating window. Right. So whether this is a weekend, it may be a Friday or a Saturday or Sunday for you, and like, this is the day where I just kind of want to let the reins loose a little bit, that's fine. Give yourself 1 to 2 days a week where you do that, because you won't want your body to get used to the fasting as normal. Okay. And that's when it can start to damage your hormones and things like that. So give yourself 1 to 2 days a week where you don't worry about the eating window. And I would even say, do it for like a month and maybe have an off week. And then you can get started again after that off week. And again, you just want to keep the body guessing a little bit so it doesn't get used to any one thing. Once it gets used to that, it starts adapting other things and changing other things in your body. There's a whole cascade of things that happen that we're just now tapping the surface into understanding. So yes, want to keep the body guessing a little bit, but incorporating intermittent fasting for 5 days out of the week for a month at a time is a great way to lose weight. Okay. So that's everything that I wanted to cover. I did not make it under 45 minutes, so I apologize, but this is a really important topic, arguably one of the most important masterclasses that we're going to have here. So I didn't want to cut you short, or, make sure that I skipped anything. So let me know if you have any questions. Right, today we're moving into our Q&A session here, but today we went over whole foods. What are whole foods? What do I mean when I say that? And what are the whole foods that you should incorporate into 80% of your diet? The 20% is when you can, have a little bit of fun. If there's just one meal where it's really hard for you to, go out and get something healthy, and you end up eating a processed frozen meal or whatever. If you do that just once, it's okay. That's the 20%, right? But if you focus 80% of your diet on eating whole foods, you're going to be setting yourself up for success. Okay. We also talked about macronutrients. So we talked about proteins being the essential nutrient that we need to make sure that we are incorporating in every single meal, every single one. And another tip that I will give you here that I forgot to mention in the macronutrient section is that breakfast. There are studies that showing that your breakfast, being primarily proteins and fats, can also help you burn more calories, lose more weight throughout the day. Okay, so And I say that because typically we have, the standard American diet, breakfast is very carbohydrate heavy. So, right, whether it's pancakes or French toast or a bagel or oatmeal or an all fruit smoothie, right? Those are all carbohydrates, and they don't always have a good source of protein and fat mixed in with them. So if you just make the shift to eating more proteins and fats for breakfast, that can also be something that you see an improvement, with how much fat you're burning throughout the day. So that can be eggs and bacon, and with maybe some avocado on top. That can be, that can be anything. I love eggs for breakfast. I think I love eggs as just in general, but also they're a great source of protein. And I always cook them in some source of, good fat, whether that's olive oil or ghee or something like that. So, and, adding in some vegetables to my eggs really touches all of the protein, all of the macronutrient categories in one meal, and makes me feel very satiated for that meal. So another tip there. But we talked about proteins, we talked about fats, we talked about carbohydrates, and how to kind of play around with those, the ratios of those macronutrients on your plate and dial it in to where you feel the best. But definitely make sure that you're getting at least 25 of your plate being protein, and play around with just increasing that until you get to about 50%, and just dial it in there, see where you feel the best. If you feel satiated, you feel energized, you shouldn't feel sluggish or tired or gas or bloaty or anything like that. So if you're feeling that way, then maybe dial it back, on the protein and other things. So play around with it, start with your proteins, then go to fats, end with carbohydrates in terms of how you play around with it. And then we also talked about the order of grubation. So, right, eat your veggies first, or a salad first, veggies first, non-starchy veggies first, then go to your proteins and fats, and finish off with your carbohydrates, or your starchy vegetables, whether that's potatoes or bread or pasta or whatever it is. Definitely save that for last. And then lastly, meal timing is what we talked about. So I recommend no more than a 12-hour eating window. So maybe it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or even 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., whatever it is for your lifestyle, that's fine. But even if you're not going to incorporate intermittent fasting, I would not go past a 12-hour eating window to give yourself time, give your body time to digest your food and actually give it an opportunity to go in and eat at some of that fat. But if your hormone levels are good, and this is something we'll cover in our one-on-one sessions, if your hormone levels are balanced, intermittent fasting is definitely a way that can maximize your results. And also there's some studies showing there's, some good longevity benefits there as well. So intermittent fasting is a great thing to incorporate, especially for weight loss, if your hormone levels and if your stress levels are at bay. If not, no worries. You will still see, weight loss. We're still going to get you shedding these pounds. We'll just find another way to do it. We'll work up to, hopefully shrinking that eating window as we get your hormone levels up to par. Okay. So I'm going to pause for a second. Let me know if there are any questions about anything that we covered here today.
So, Sam, I don't know if we covered it necessarily, but
Okay.
In regards to the groups, obviously it's a consumable, so I'm going to ask. The sauces and spices that we use, I want to know like the significance or some, outside of salt, obviously you want to stay away from, but the significance, but like hot sauce versus barbecue sauce, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah. Great question.
Person, you know what I'm saying? But hot sauce, the only one I can tolerate and act like I'm a G in these streets is the Cholula here. That's it. And I'm a whole garden tool for everything else. But the barbecue sauce, sometimes, like if a meal calls for, let's say a sloppy Joe. I don't know why that's coming to mind as the first thing, because I ain't ate a sloppy Joe since I was 10, but we're gonna go with that for the example. But anyways, You know what I mean? Like one or the other, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
And then the spices. So my spice, I need to get a spice rack. Clearly, I've been sending these pictures wrong to the wrong friends because they definitely ain't picked up on it. I'm fixing to show you this disrespect over here. Hold on. Let me see. How do I get this here? Come on now. Look. Nope, don't act like you can't be technology savvy. Okay, so you see all of these spices. It's disrespectful. Yes, I know.
Yet, but okay, wait. Oh, there we go. There we go. And yours is more organized than mine is. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It's the only thing that I can do to, be, attempt to trick myself that I need all of them spices. However, but I wanted to know, like, which ones do I just need to toss now? You know what I'm saying? Opposed to just hanging on to them because of Big Mama's recipe or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Of course, I can substitute certain things and all the rest of that stuff, but I was trying to figure out, like, and then also the last one is with the oils. So you know how, well, I don't know if you know, but Spain is disrespectful, addicted to olive oil. They got it like, I've never seen olive oil. It's like this big, like legit, and it's just olive oil. Like they are insane addicted out here. But they do also have different kind of oils out here too, whatever, like the sunflower oil. And I was just wondering, like, what is the, how you were saying avocado oil and the olive oil and stuff like that, is sunflower oil pro and con, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So there is definitely some nuance with everything that I'm going to say. I'll preface that, but let me start with spices, because that's, I think, the first thing that you mentioned. So with spices, I would say the biggest thing to watch out for is the spice mixes. So in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with spices. They should be a part of your diet. And they make food good to eat. So I personally do not shy away from spices. However, I think what I do shy away from and what I tend to not use, especially on a regular basis, is the ready-made spice mixes. So like the Lawry's, I know, I'm sorry to anybody that's out there with hurt feelings with that. But if you actually look at the Lawry's bottle, like if you look at the container, and you would think like, oh, it's seasoning salt, so it's going to have salt and garlic and onion or whatever else they use, right? But even after that list is done, there's still 4 more ingredients that are, you don't even know what they are. They're preservatives, they're anti-caking, they're whatever, that we typically don't need to be consuming. Yep. So, and it's pretty much with any spice mix. I didn't mean to just pick out Lori's, but there's like the Tony's Cajun seasoning. Any type of spice mix that is highly commercialized, they have to, right? And I do come from the food and beverage industry. So, I do understand on the business side, they have to make it so that they can widely produce it and that it can be stored on shelves in warehouses and things like that for months at a time. So that by the time that it gets to you in your kitchen, you still have a couple months to be able to use it. Otherwise, what's the point? So that's why. But a lot of times it's that extra, that extra sodium, that extra preservatives, it's all those extra things added in it that are going to cause damage to the body. So what I recommend as much as possible is to just make your own seasoning mixes. So that's everything that they use in a seasoning mix is typically something that you can buy at the store. You probably got over there on your counter already, because looks like you have pretty much everything. So what I've started doing is just looking at, I will, buy the seasonings, or when I'm at the store, I'll take a picture of the label and see like, okay, so what are they? Okay, so they've got salt, they've got garlic powder, they've got onion powder, they've got paprika. I can buy all of these things and make my own seasoning mix that I know exactly what's in here, because there's nothing wrong with onion powder or garlic powder or paprika or cayenne pepper or curry or literally cinnamon. Like there's nothing wrong with these spices. I would say when you can, go organic with them, but even if you don't, it's not the end of the world. So that's my sense on my kind of spiel on spices itself. Now salt, slightly different story, and the reason why I say that is because there is a hierarchy, if you will, of salts that are better for the body versus not. And your table salt, I would personally I would check it, only because it is highly refined. And it does not, if you think about salt and its purpose in the body, it's a mineral. It's something, it's an electrolyte that our body needs to be able to send all the electrical signals and everything. Long story short, how we typically, if you think about thousands of years ago, before we had salt nicely in a little container, we consumed it in the water. Like it was naturally in the water in natural forms. So in my opinion, it's best to go with a more natural form of salt. So that's sea salt or Himalayan salt or kelp salt, kelptic salt, I think it's what it's called. Those are the ones that I would go for rather than just the plain table salt, because that has got everything stripped away from it. So you're just getting sodium, and that can have some negative benefits to the system if you're not getting the other things with it. If it's not really, if it's not serving its purpose of providing the electrolytes, then it's not really doing its job. So yeah, long story short, make your own seasoning mixes, but make it with a Himalayan salt or a sea salt or a Celtic salt, something like that. That's a little bit more natural. Your body's going to respond better to that than it will a table salt. The blood pressure will respond better to that. So in my opinion, when people say like, that you need to avoid salt or cut back on salt, it's, in my opinion, the salt, the table salt and the sodium that is typically added into like frozen TV dinners and pasta sauces and things like that. That's the sodium that we need to be avoiding. So hopefully that answers your question on spices. Not a bad thing, but just watch out for the salt and other preservatives. Now sauces are a different conversation, because they almost always, I won't say always, because I've found the brands that work for me that don't have the added sugar, but they almost always will have a ton of added sugar. And that's really the problem with them. So they're not a bad guy. Sauce in general is not a bad thing. Again, I'm all for flavored food. I do not eat bland food. But you just have to be careful with the amount of sugar, and it may be even different for you over in Spain. I like to think they're a little bit more conscious over there, and with what the things that they are allowed even to put into their products and call it sugar. So I would say just, start reading ingredient labels and sugar for the sugar content, and just be cognizant that you want to find a barbecue sauce that's got the least amount, if any, added sugar as possible. So there is a brand over here. I don't know if they have it over where you're at, but there is a brand out here called Primal Kitchen, which I love because they have a whole line of salad dressings, sauces. I mean, just anything, mayos, everything that you can think of. And they're very cognizant to not put any added sugar in it. Or at least not any added like table sugar. I think there's one that maybe have some honey in it or something like that to sweeten it. But typically they're using vegetables, they're using fruits and things like that to sweeten their salad dressings rather than just dumping some sugar in there. So that would be my take on the sauces, is just watch for the sugar content. That's typically they'll typically sneak it in there, even if it's not called sugar and maybe called something else. But yeah, just watch for the added sugar. This is typically going to be the best option if you're up for it, which is making your own, of course, which I've never actually made my own barbecue sauce, so I can't speak to that. But sometimes I will make my own like salad dressings and things like that. But yeah, just find a brand that has the least amount of sugar in it. And I would say stick with that one. That's for not just barbecue sauce, that's for pretty much any sauces. Not all of them are sweetened, but a lot of times you'll find added sugar in them, even if they don't necessarily need it. So pay attention to the ingredient labels. Always on an ingredient label, I happen to have some walnuts right here, but on an ingredient label, at least here in the States, you'll see sugars, and then they actually have another line that says added sugars. Okay, so that's the one to pay attention to, is how much added sugar have they added to that barbecue sauce or that balsamic dressing or that pasta sauce. Find if you're going to make like a pasta spaghetti or something like that, Try to find like a tomato sauce that's just got tomatoes, right? You just want pureed tomatoes and that's it. But a lot of like the jarred marinara sauces, the pregos, the ragus, all that fun stuff, those are going to have added sugar. And that's where you want to be careful. But definitely, you know, I would go minimal in the ingredients and the amount of sugar that is in any type of condiment that you get from the store. Does that generally answer your question? Oh, if you're talking, you're on mute.
I see. Yeah, that covers it.
Okay, cool. You have any other questions?
Yeah, the oil.
What'd you say?
The oil.
The oil. Oh, yes, you mentioned the oil. So sunflower oil, I have actually, and this is where I say there's some nuance because I part of me saying it depends on who you ask, but for the most part, that falls under the seed oil categories that probably are best for us to minimize as much as possible. Because yeah, just it's actually interesting. They're starting to find like in our actual muscle tissues and things like that, and in our blood, they're actually starting to find like traces of oils and plastics and things like that. So that's just saying like we're in general and consuming a lot of it. But yeah, I would say most of it, and I do a lot of research, and that's why I say there's some nuance, because some people say, you know, sunflower oil is okay, but a lot of research is showing that sunflower oil has some of the same effects that like a canola oil or peanut oil or the things like that have, and that it's better to stick with olive oil and avocado oil. Those are really the top two, and coconut oil, the top three things that I always hear as healthy, good oils for us to be using. As avocado oil, olive oil, and coconut oil. So as much as possible, I would stick with those. You know, of the three, I think avocado oil is the most mild tasting. I think coconut oil is the best for high heat, but anything you cook in coconut oil is going to have a coconut taste to it. So if that's not your thing, then I would definitely go with like an avocado oil. And then olive oil, again, does have a slight olive taste depending on, you know, where you're getting it from. So that's just something to keep in mind too, if you don't mind it. I think if you cook it in olive oil, I feel like that taste kind of dissipates. But if you're just pouring olive oil, you know, to make a salad dressing or something like that, you're going to get a little bit of that olive oil taste. So just keep that in mind. Avocado oil is probably the most mild one. That it is not cheap. I'm not going to lie to you, but you also don't need to use a lot of it.
Here.
You have that?
It is here.
Nice.
Extremely cheap.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's. I'm sure over there you probably have olive oil and avocado oil. Way cheaper than we do over here.
Okay, and so as you know, I'm not a meat eater, but the tofu. So I have taken to the tofu scrambles when it's a tug of war here of getting out of the bed and actually making breakfast, opposed to actually being on time for work. Mm-hmm. So whenever I get there, that is a go-to, like the roasted potato or the roasted sweet potatoes. Like I'm making some right now, and tofu scramble, just mixing them Jones up together is the truth. Mm-hmm. But I don't necessarily know if it's the, you know what I'm saying, the best for my body.
Yeah. So we'll know better after we take your food sensitivity test and kind of determine what's going to be best. But I will say tofu in general is a great, plant source of protein.
Do you do tofu versus tempeh though?
Say it again.
Which one is, I guess best is tofu versus tempeh?
I don't know that I actually know which one is best. I do know that tempeh is fermented, which can have its benefits. Right. So I mean that may put it slightly above tofu, but I can't. I mean both. I would kind of put both in the same category or in the same level playing field of being equally good sources of protein. I know when we were doing our stint of veganism, we were using a lot of tempeh. I think and this is where it comes to more of an individual thing, because I did find out for myself, like I'm sensitive to soybeans. That was that my number one?
Yeah, that's what you said.
That was my number one sensitivity. Like my only red food was soybean. So it's something that I try to avoid in all forms. But if that's not your situation, then go for it. By all means, it's a great source of protein. It's so very versatile. And yeah, I don't think I did have a tofu scramble once, and that was very good. So it is a great way to, there's so many things you can do with tofu and tempeh. So yeah, we'll know a little bit more to see if soy pops up on your food sensitivity test. Then I would say like, okay, let's back off that and let's find some other alternatives. But if it doesn't, and you like it and you like the way it tastes, then eat away. Make sure you're if that's going to be your main source of protein, I would make sure that it's incorporated in enough of your diet to get the adequate amount of protein in every meal. But yeah, I think in general, it's a great source of plant protein. I don't know why I didn't include that actually on my list, but those are probably because I'm biased and not eating it myself. But no, it's a great source of plant protein and very versatile. So I'd say go for it. And I say go for it tentatively until we get your personal results back. All right. You got any other questions?
No, surprising, man. I'm a talker.
I know. But that's perfectly fine. You know where to find me. If you do have any further questions, you can chat me and I'll get right back to you.
Will do. So,
all right. Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy that we were able to get you on a live masterclass. Does this time work for you?
Sometimes.
Okay. I'll probably switch it back and forth between, I think some weeks I do it the Thursday evenings, our time, and then other times I'll do it Saturdays, just so that every now and then, hopefully you can hop in one of these. So I'll probably just continue to go back and forth just to cater to everybody's schedules. But yes, happy to have you all join, and whoever's watching this after it's recorded live, thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I will see you at the next masterclass. Thank you.